Scouring around the world, we sometimes encounter horrifying situations and realize that some creatures are so cruel and despicable that even the darkest entities of the supernatural realm reject them. Even the most enlightened beings, with compassion beyond infinite, struggle to forgive them. One such being is the dry corpse, a creature doomed to wander the earth for eternity. Curious? Stay with me, and let's unravel this enigmatic legend. A long time ago, in a village in Brazil's Ribeira Valley, there lived a man whose presence made even the bravest tremble. His soul seemed incapable of knowing kindness. This man, whose name has been lost to time, was cruel in ways few would dare to imagine. He walked the streets with a cold and disdainful gaze, spreading pain and suffering wherever he went. He tormented the most vulnerable, from defenseless animals to children and the elderly who crossed his path. His cruelty knew no bounds, and his arrogance was fueled by his mockery of sacred things. Prayer warriors whispered invocations as he passed by, fearing that he would provoke not only the wrath of men, but also that of greater forces. The villagers avoided him, but nature seemed to condemn him even more. Not even the sound of birds dared to follow him, and the winds that swept across his home carried an omen of a tragic end. But, as with everything in life, time became his judge. The cruel man fell ill. He faced a lonely death, with no one to hold his hand, no tears shed at his funeral, and above all, no prayers to intercede for his soul. It seemed a fitting fate, but what came next was even darker. When his body was buried, something inexplicable happened. Even the earth refused to accept him. The ground seemed to reject his eternal rest, spitting him back to the surface, as if even the worms refused to devour his flesh. Legend says that on that night, as the winds howled and the full moon illuminated the cemetery, the man began to transform into something terrifying. There was no peace for him, neither in heaven nor in hell. The village, gripped by an indescribable fear, witnessed something unprecedented. The ground that should have been his eternal rest rejected him, as if even the earth, so accepting of human impurities, could not bear such wickedness. Thus began his sentence. There, exposed to time and forces beyond mortal comprehension, the man's body underwent a terrifying metamorphosis. His skin, once full of life, though marked by his cruelty, began to wither. Every piece of flesh disintegrated until only a cadaverous, dry and disfigured appearance remained. His bones, now visible beneath the stretched skin, seemed to scream with the suffering of his soul. The eyes, once arrogant and filled with disdain, became dark holes like windows to an eternal void. Condemned to wander without rest, the dry corpse found shelter in dense and shadowy forests, where sunlight barely dared to enter. He became an unsettling presence, a whisper of death carried far by the wind. Tree branches bent at his touch, as if even nature recognized the weight of the curse he bore. His gait is slow, dragging, as if every step is a punishment, a reminder that there is no escape for those who defy the sacred laws of life and spirit. Over time, his figure became a symbol of terror. The villagers avoided any mention of the dry corpse, but the stories were unavoidable. They said his presence brought a cold that made bones ache, even on the hottest nights. Those who dared to cross his path spoke of an oppressive force that drained their energy, leaving them weak, ill, or even driving them to madness. The transformation of the dry corpse was not only physical, but also spiritual. He became the living or dead reflection of his own sins. His existence, now cursed, serves as a glaring warning about the consequences of a life dedicated to evil. The dry corpse is not merely a monster. He is a grim reminder that the choices made in life echo far beyond death, leaving deep and irreversible marks on the world. Far away, in the dark and dense forests that once served as a refuge for travelers and a haven for hunters, terror took root with the arrival of the dry corpse. The creature, condemned to wander eternally, seemed to carry with it all the evil it had sown in life. It was not merely a shadow in the night, it was an oppressive presence, a living reminder that evil does not dissolve with death. Stories began to spread among the villagers in nearby settlements. Travelers who dared to venture through the deserted trails returned transformed, with hollow gazes and weakened bodies, muttering incoherent tales of a terrifying encounter. They said the dry corpse emerged from the shadows without warning, surrounded by a deadly silence. Its cadaverous figure, with exposed bones and skin as dry as a dead branch, was enough to freeze blood in veins. But what truly terrified were its eyes, or the lack thereof. Black, deep voids that seemed to devour not just light, but also energy and the will to live. Those who failed to escape reported that the dry corpse did not attack physically. It had no need for weapons or violence. Its mere presence drained the life force of anyone who dared to cross its path. They said that as it approached, the air grew heavy, as though the forest itself held its breath. An inexplicable cold set in, even on the most stifling nights, and the sounds of crickets and birds fell silent, leaving only an oppressive stillness. However, not everyone survived to tell their stories. Many disappeared into the woods, their bodies never to be found. Villagers believed these people were taken by the dry corpse, condemned to share in its curse or to be forever lost in a limbo between the living and the dead. This fear turned the creature into a true legend. Nights in the village were marked by distant screams emanating from the depths of the forest, chilling the hearts of even the bravest. Shadows moved strangely among the trees, and dragging footsteps echoed along the trails, even when no one seemed to be there. The accounts fueled the collective imagination, but also reinforced the fear. Encountering the dry corpse was not just terrifying, it was a death sentence or a descent into madness. Thus, the legend of the haunting creature solidified, transforming the dry corpse into more than just a monster. It became a grim warning. The evil cultivated in life grows deep roots, capable of surpassing the boundaries of death. The creature was not merely a ghostly being, but the embodiment of a life without remorse, condemned to spread terror as eternal payment for its sins. Although its existence is shrouded in terror and curse, some believe that the dry corpse carries within it a fragment of desire for redemption. They say that on silent nights, when the winds stop blowing and the stillness becomes deafening, whispers can be heard coming from the depths of the forest. These murmurs, which many believe come from the dry corpse, are not cries of hatred but laments filled with regret and pain. Even trapped in its curse, it seems to seek relief that will never come. However, its very nature prevents it from reaching any semblance of peace. The malice it carried in life has rooted so deeply in its soul that it has transformed it into a creature incapable of finding light or hope. Its body is a prison, reflecting its sins, dry, empty, and devoid of life. And so, it wanders without rest, a grim reminder that some choices can never be undone. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to comment on what you thought of this story, and also check out our playlist appearing on the screen. A thought-provoking tale for us to reflect on the impact of our actions on the world and eternity.